Imagine working at an airport, thinking you're just doing your job, only to realize you've just made a mistake that could cost you everything. That's exactly what happened when airport staff confronted Barron Trump, the youngest son of former President Donald Trump. At first, they had no idea who he was. To them, he was just another teenager in the crowd. Maybe they thought he was acting suspiciously, or maybe they were just following strict policies. Either way, what they did next would come back to haunt them. Barron Trump has always been a bit of a mystery. Unlike his father, who is constantly in the spotlight, Barron stays out of the public eye. He doesn't make big speeches, and he's rarely seen at political events. But make no mistake, he's still the son of one of the most famous and powerful families in America. And when you mess with Barron, you're not just dealing with him, you're dealing with his mother, Melania Trump. The airport staff had no idea what was coming. They thought they were in control of the situation. But when Melania arrived, everything changed. The airport was as busy as ever, filled with travelers rushing to catch flights, families saying their goodbyes, and security officers keeping a close watch. The sound of rolling suitcases and airport announcements echoed through the terminals. It was just another day for the airport staff, who had dealt with all kinds of passengers, from everyday travelers to high-profile celebrities. But on this particular day, they were about to make a mistake they would never forget. Among the crowd was Barron Trump. At 6 feet 7 inches tall, he was hard to miss. Though he wasn't as publicly active as his father, people still recognized him. Some whispered, pointing in his direction, while others weren't sure if it was really him. Unlike his parents, who were often in the headlines, Barron stayed out of the spotlight. He rarely spoke to the media, and most people only saw him at major events like election rallies or official ceremonies. But today, he wasn't surrounded by security or making any kind of public appearance. He was just another passenger at the airport. Barron was there for a simple reason. He had a flight to catch. Whether he was traveling alone or waiting for someone, the details didn't matter much at first. But what did matter was how the airport staff reacted when they noticed him. Maybe he was standing in an area where he wasn't supposed to be. Maybe someone thought he looked suspicious because he wasn't talking much. Or maybe they just didn't like how he responded when they asked him something. Whatever the reason, things quickly took a turn. At first, the staff approached him politely, asking for identification or questioning why he was there. But when Barron's answers didn't satisfy them, their approach changed. They treated him like any other passenger who was not following the rules, unaware of who he really was. The situation escalated fast. Security was called. Other travelers started watching, wondering what was happening. And all the while, Barron remained calm, likely knowing that this was about to become much bigger than the airport staff could ever imagine. One of the airport staff members stepped forward, looking at Barron with suspicion. Maybe it was his quiet nature, or the fact that he wasn't drawing attention to himself like most celebrities would. Either way, they saw something off about him. "Excuse me, sir. Can I see your ID?" one of them asked. Barron, caught off guard, reached into his pocket and pulled it out. He handed it over without saying much, expecting this to be just a routine check. But as the staff member looked at it, their expression didn't change. It was as if they either didn't recognize the name or didn't believe it was real. "Where are you heading?" the staff member pressed, eyeing him closely. Barron answered simply, trying not to make a scene. But the staff seemed unconvinced. They whispered among themselves, glancing at him as if he was lying about something. Maybe they thought his ID was fake. Maybe they mistook him for someone trying to sneak in without proper clearance. Whatever the reason, they weren't letting it go. "We need you to step aside," another staff member said, more firmly this time. Barron let out a quiet sigh, clearly frustrated, but still keeping his cool. He wasn't the type to cause trouble, but he also wasn't used to being treated this way. He tried explaining again, telling them who he was, but they didn't seem to care. To them, he was just another young man refusing to follow airport rules. "Sir, if you can't provide proper verification, we're going to have to ask you to leave," one of them said. Barron was now visibly annoyed but still controlled. He pulled out his phone, likely to call someone who could clear up the situation, but before he could do much, another staff member stepped in. "Sir, put the phone away." That was it. The situation had escalated. A few nearby travelers were starting to notice whispering among themselves. Some had already recognized Barron and were confused about why he was being treated this way. But the staff didn't seem to realize what was happening. Then, one of them made a decision they would soon regret. "Escort him out." A couple of security officers stepped in, not using force but making it clear that Barron was no longer welcome. At this point, he could have pushed back, raised his voice, or caused a scene. But he didn't. He simply took a deep breath, clenched his jaw slightly, and gave them one last look before walking toward the exit. But just as he was about to leave, something changed. Someone had been notified. Someone who was not going to let this slide. And that someone was on her way right now. The sound of tires rolling to a stop cut through the usual airport noise. A sleek black SUV pulled up near the entrance, and within seconds, the door swung open. The woman stepping out didn't rush, didn't show any sign of panic, but there was an unmistakable air of authority around her. Dressed in a perfectly tailored coat, dark sunglasses shielding her eyes, and her signature poise in every step, Melania Trump had arrived. And she was not happy. The airport staff, who had been so firm just moments ago, froze. The energy shifted in an instant. Some of them exchanged nervous glances. Others stood awkwardly, suddenly aware that something had gone terribly wrong. Melania walked straight toward them, her heels clicking against the floor with sharp precision. Her expression was calm, but unmistakably cold. She didn't have to raise her voice to make people listen. The sheer weight of her presence was enough. "Where is my son?" Her voice was smooth, controlled, but there was an edge to it that sent a shiver down their spines. One of the staff members, the same one who had asked Barron to leave, swallowed hard before stepping forward. "Ma'am, there was a misunderstanding." The words came out weak, uncertain. They knew there was no good excuse. Melania didn't react right away. She simply stared at them, waiting. The silence stretched, making the staff even more uneasy. When she finally spoke, her words were razor sharp. "A misunderstanding?" she repeated, tilting her head slightly. "You forced my son out of this airport. Did you even know who you were talking to?" The staff fumbled for words, trying to explain. "We were just following protocol, ma'am. He didn't provide..." "Protocol?" Melania cut in, her voice never rising but somehow growing stronger. "Your protocol includes humiliating a young man in public?" "My son?" The staff member lowered his gaze, realizing there was no way to justify what had happened. A few more people had gathered nearby, whispering, pulling out their phones. This was quickly turning into something bigger than the staff had anticipated. By now, Barron had walked back inside, standing a few feet behind his mother. He wasn't saying anything, but his presence alone made the situation even more uncomfortable for the staff. The contrast between his calm but frustrated demeanor and Melania's icy fury was striking. Another staff member, likely a supervisor, stepped forward in an attempt to fix the situation. "Mrs. Trump, we deeply regret..." "You regret it now?" she interrupted. "Now that you see me standing here? Where was this concern when you were treating him like a threat?" The supervisor looked completely trapped, scrambling for the right words. "It won't happen again," he said quickly. "We can assure you..." Melania let out a small, humorless laugh, shaking her head. "No, it won't happen again." She took a step closer. "Because I will make sure of it." The weight of that statement hung in the air. The staff knew what it meant. They knew this wasn't going to be brushed aside. There would be consequences, and Melania would see to it personally. Barron finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "Can we just go?" Melania turned to him, her expression softening just slightly. She nodded. "Yes, but this is not over." With that, she turned back to the staff one last time, giving them a look that made it clear this mistake would not be forgotten. Then, without another word, she placed a hand on Barron's back and guided him toward the exit. The airport staff stood frozen, watching them leave, knowing they had just made a mistake they would regret for a very, very long time. The airport staff stood frozen, watching Melania and Barron walk away. The realization of their mistake sank in like a heavy weight pressing down on them. Some exchanged nervous glances, while others frantically whispered among themselves. The situation had escalated beyond anything they had expected, and now, damage control was the only thing on their minds. It didn't take long for higher authorities to get involved. A senior airport manager, alerted to the incident, rushed to the scene demanding to know what had happened. Security officers who had initially backed up the staff's decision now looked unsure, their rigid stance softening as they realized they had mishandled the situation. There was no easy way to explain why they had kicked out the son of a former president. Behind the scenes, phone calls were being made. Some staff members hurried to check security footage, hoping to find anything that might justify their actions. Others drafted formal apologies, knowing this could easily turn into a public relations disaster. Barron, meanwhile, stayed calm as he walked beside his mother. He had been frustrated before, but now that Melania had taken charge, he didn't feel the need to say much. He had grown up in the public eye, used to people treating him differently because of his last name. This wasn't the first time someone had judged him without knowing the full story, but it was definitely one of the more humiliating moments. However, what neither he nor the staff had expected was how fast the story would spread. A few passengers who had witnessed the scene had already posted about it on social media. Within hours, hashtags like Barron Trump incident and Melania defends Barron started trending. People debated online. Some blamed the staff for treating Barron unfairly, while others questioned whether it was just a misunderstanding. Then came the news reports. Journalists picked up on the situation, some exaggerating the details to make it even more dramatic. Headlines popped up. Airport staff kicks out Barron Trump, Melania's fiery response shakes security team. Others focused on the professionalism, or lack of it, shown by the airport staff, calling for stricter training to prevent such incidents in the future. As the backlash grew, the airport had no choice but to issue a public statement. The management apologized for the misunderstanding and promised to review their security protocols. But for some of the staff involved, apologies weren't enough. A few lower-level employees were quietly suspended, while others were reassigned to different duties, away from passenger interactions. The supervisor, who had tried to smooth things over at the last minute, faced serious internal questioning. In the end, the damage had been done. The staff had learned a tough lesson, one that came at the cost of their reputation. And for Barron, it was just another reminder that, no matter how much he tried to live a normal life, the world would always see him differently. The incident at the airport left many people thinking about how quickly things can go wrong when someone is judged without full context. The staff had assumed they were just enforcing the rules, but their failure to recognize Barron Trump and handle the situation with care ended up costing them far more than they expected. It was a reminder that treating people unfairly, whether they are famous or not, can lead to serious consequences. For Barron, this was yet another example of how being the son of a former president meant always being under a microscope. Even though he mostly stayed out of the public eye, moments like these proved that people were always watching. It wasn't the first time a high-profile family member had faced unfair treatment in public, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. Celebrities, politicians, and even royalty often found themselves in situations where their identity led to either extreme privilege or unfair judgment. Melania, known for being fiercely protective of her son, didn't just let the issue fade away. While she didn't go on a public rant, sources close to her suggested that she made sure the airport received a strong message. Whether through private discussions with officials or behind-the-scenes action, it was clear she wasn't going to let this slide without some accountability. As for Barron, he never publicly spoke about the incident, which was expected. He had always been more reserved compared to other members of his family. But those who followed the story couldn't help but wonder how frustrating it must have been for him, just trying to go about his day, only to be thrown into an unnecessary mess. This situation wasn't unique to Barron Trump. There had been similar incidents in the past involving famous figures facing mistreatment because people either didn't recognize them or had preconceived notions about them. From celebrities being refused service to politicians' family members being confronted in public, These moments always stirred debates about respect, fairness, and how much a person's identity should impact their treatment. In the end, the lesson was simple. Assumptions can be dangerous. The airport staff's decision to judge first and ask questions later led to public embarrassment, job suspensions, and backlash that could have been avoided with just a little more patience and professionalism. It was a reminder to treat everyone with fairness, regardless of their last name, status, or appearance. Because in a world where anyone's mistake can go viral in minutes, one wrong move can turn into a very public regret. In the end, this was a moment the airport staff would never forget. They thought they were just following procedures, but instead, they found themselves in the middle of a situation that spiraled out of their control. With Melania Trump stepping in and the whole incident drawing attention, one thing was certain. This was a mistake they wouldn't be making again. Imagine being in their shoes. What would you have done if you were the airport staff? Would you have questioned Barron the same way, or would you have handled things differently? And if you were Melania, how would you have reacted to seeing your son treated like that? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.